the best equipment is the equipment you have. The best camera out there is the one that you have with you when you need to take the shot.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Beyond Social podcast, a show where we go behind the scenes on how we're building an awesome tool for marketers. Today, we're taking a step in a different direction than Vistasocial, the product, and all the tools that we're working with to help marketers and strategies to help marketers. We've got awesome guests on our episode today. We've got Sabreen, our head of social, or head of marketing, Sabreen, who's been on our episodes here before. And we've got Jon-Stansel. If you haven't seen our episode with him where we talked about community engagement, definitely make sure to check it out. He is, I'm going to say award-winning because, man, I've seen some of your stuff. Award-winning social media consultant. He's a speaker. He's worked with brands. His experience ranges from working in higher ed with universities all the way through most recently working with brands like Prime Video on shows, Invincibles, Lord of the Rings series. There's so much. We're so excited to have him here. Thank you for making your way to the studio.
So excited to be here.
For recording with us. Today we're going to talk, I want to dive into the world of content because that's doing the work. That's what Vitaly and I had recently talked about, is that there's no shortcuts to social. You got to do the work. And you mentioned last time that 10% should be posting. Is that correct? And 80% the engagement?
Yeah. I really think like the posting is the tip of the iceberg, and the engagement and responding to your followers and engaging with that community is really where most of your if you are still on Twitter and you go and you click the replies, that's where you should really see the social media manager in action. Because I really think there's a lot of gold in community management.
So we're going to focus on that tip of the iceberg then.
Okay.
Right? Kind of worked in reverse. We talked about the below the sea level, and now we're going to, but I want to explore the concept. And we've been seeing this a little bit more often now. And I'm not exactly sure why this changed recently, but produced content, right? Brand will maybe hire out an agency or a marketer who's going to get a nice camera, get things looking super pristine, crisp, audio, all that great stuff. And then on the other side, same brand, maybe recording something on their phone, a little bit more, maybe less polished, let's say. And somehow that's performing really well, sometimes even better than the more polished content. We're seeing that across the board. And I want to explore that with both of you. I know that, Jon-Stansel, you've had some experiences with this at university before.
Yeah, it's something I think we've seen for a long time where, we keep saying authentic content. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? Because, what makes something real and authentic? Personally, I think it requires a bit of vulnerability, which scares brands. Mm-hmm. Like you've got to be a little vulnerable. And, that authenticity, sometimes we lose that in the production, mm-hmm. right? We get focused. And I'm the same way. I can be like a video file or audio file and just be like, oh man, this picture has to be absolutely perfect. Everything has to be just right. But your audience doesn't care about that so much if the story and the feeling and the emotion isn't there. So I think that's really hard for brands to accept, because for so long before social, it was just, all right, you pay a production company, you get your commercial, you put it on, most popular show and you're done. Now we have to feed a content hungry machine. And we can't have the production value all the time. And that's not a bad thing. Like we can do more. We can tell better stories and be more authentic now.
What you're saying there is it's key to a brand that's listening or a social media manager that's listening, that you don't have to have $1 million budget to mm-hmm. be on social and to do it well, mm-hmm. right? Sabreen, I think, you've got a lot of experience working from social on Fetch to helping founders to build their presence online. I mean, you know what it's like to have the resources to do the high production all the way through. Like, I got to go a little bit more run and gun. Tell us a little bit about your experience and why you think that this is kind of working.
Absolutely. So it's funny because right before this episode, John and I were having a conversation, and I said to him, everybody's trying to build a presence on social media. And even from a thought leadership lens, in order to build thought leadership, you have to have a thought. Mm. And you're only able to have that thought if you're taking the time to think, right? But not so much that you want it to be perfect to the point that when that wave has passed, you're not able to kind of capitalize on it. So I think it is definitely a hot topic. It's very a big debate, which is, guys, which one is it? Because you look at Instagram and TikTok, and the guidelines are very much make sure, rule number one, that your content is really good quality. I think we over-index on that sometimes, which is it doesn't have to be like 4K all the time or whatever, our iPhones are great, or like any Android phone, whatever that is. I would say the simple reason why people who are moving quicker or are not producing content that is like overly edited or produced is because they're moving with agility. Speed in social media is everything. So they're able to attach their content to a trending audio, or they're able to hop on like a lip sync trend and very quickly do that. But I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I got accepted into the University of Westminster, which was a big deal for me because I'm this girl who grew up in New Delhi and had never been away from my family. And I wanted to record a video and upload it to my Instagram. And so I record this video, and just as I'm about to get into it, I slip and very awkwardly fell on my face and I had to hit cut. And then I kind of went back to record it and eventually posted the more polished version. And a year later, I'm like going through my memory, like my phone, and I come across this video and I'm like, wait, wouldn't it be so funny if I actually put it out? And it just takes off.
Wow.
What would you say to that? Like this, on one hand, like the former video has so much depth and I'm actually sharing something meaningful about my life. But then you have this, so speed, being able to create moments of delight and actually being in the moment, like John said, like vulnerability and like that raw form. Like, are you brave enough to show up in your most raw form?
That's powerful. The vulnerability piece, because I mean, if I don't see myself or my dream or the problem that I have in the content from a brand or whatever it is, like it's hard for me to relate. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, no, because this is something I say, and this is the secret of social media that most people forget. People don't share content from brands to help the brand, right? They do it to say something about themselves. Right? They share it to say, I'm the type of person that has this sort of sense of humor or care about this sort of issue. It helps them tell their story. So if your content helps others tell their story, they'll do the job of telling your story. Wow. So like you've got to be there and give them something that they can relate to, identify with, and helps them tell the world who they are. So by being authentic and doing that, we can find ways to get that content out there.
And actually, John, to build on that, I was reading this research a couple of days ago about cognitive overload, which is when people are producing videos to tell the brand story rather than their own, and they're like very buttoned up videos, beautifully made. We associate that quality with paid ads, right? So what happens is you're like, whoa, this is like too well done to inspire me. So this is probably somebody who has like a ton of money just sitting on the side and they're privileged. And so they've produced this content versus I see someone who, and Vitaly and Reggie and I were talking about this guy who has an entire Instagram feed of sneezing, and he just sneezes real funny and he has a ton of followers. And so, but I look at that and I'm like, maybe I should start a page where I just like sneeze, or like, hey, when I like wake up in the morning, I have an interesting hairstyle, and maybe my entire page should be about that. So I think that there's a lot of like visual fatigue associated with seeing stuff that is so perfect that I've personally gone to the caption to see if it's sponsored. But the reality is this person like has a degree in film, and so he's really interested in cameras and that kind of stuff, and he has a good setup.
Yeah.
So that's like another factor that affects viewership.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I mean, I did go to film school growing up, and so I get excited, right? I mean, we're in a new studio, we're shooting on red, like all this stuff is awesome, it's crazy. But at the same time, if the content, one, like you're saying, is not helping the audience member to share their story, because it's true. I mean, the sneezing, that's hilarious. But sometimes I recall family members or colleagues that have really funny sneezes. So I see something like that on my reel, I'm forwarding that, I'm sending it to somebody, and it creates that relatability, that level of connection. So Jon-Stansel, can we go back to maybe early in your career? I know that you worked with a couple of universities starting out. How are some of the ways that you kind of saw this play out?
One, especially in higher ed, you're dealing with much younger audiences for the most part, and those audiences, their BS meter is very high. They can tell, they know when they're being marketed to, they know when they're being sold to. So they've already kind of, especially hearing from a university, they've got kind of a bit of skepticism a little bit. Like, of course, the university is going to say that. So a lot of times, universities, they love their polish. They want to make it look as clean and as beautiful and crisp as possible, show that gorgeous campus. We like to joke about, we call it the girl studies under tree shot. Like, go to any university webpage, and like on the homepage, you'll see it's usually a young woman sitting under a tree on a beautiful college campus studying. That never happens. That never happens on campus. So rare. But the one time of year it does happen, like, and it's a beautiful day, and that happens. A university photographer is there to get the shot and put it on the homepage. But that sort of content just does not perform well with students. One thing I've noticed is just the content that's a little bit more unpolished, a little bit more off the cuff. Maybe it's shot by a student. You give your student ambassadors access to some equipment and say, hey, let's shoot that. Let's do a day in the life of a student video and let them be the ones that handle it. Of course, you've got to be a little bit more, put some guardrails on there and help them out a bit. But it's surprising what does well in that. Like, one example is when I was at Texas State University. If you've ever been there, I doubt you have, but it's a beautiful campus, as most college campuses are. But what's really unique about it is there's a river flowing through the campus, the San Marcos River. It's spring fed. It's 72 degrees year round. It's beautiful. And the tradition is, at graduation, the students jump into the river with their cap and gowns on. It's a big deal. They've done it for years. And one year for graduation, our videographer, of course, they want the big, administration wants the big graduation video of, people getting their diplomas, all that. We spend a lot of time on that. But he's like, while I was filming it, I grabbed some B-roll of these students jumping into the river. And it was about 30 seconds long. He just threw it together, made a few shots in slow motion and then, put some music over it. And that did better than anything. That was the highest performing content that year. It was just like an offhand thing. Like, what if we posted? I don't even think we put a caption on it. I think we just posted it. And you just never know really sometimes what's going to take off. And I was talking to you about this earlier. It's like, yes, that sort of content seems like it doesn't take a long time, but you have to have a team that has the experience to say, oh, hey, we happen to have something really cool here. How can we utilize it? Can we repurpose this B-roll for a social post? Can we do something else with it? And that takes experience. So it's the one thing I do say is, like, some of this unpolished content, it looks like sometimes it's done quickly, and it looks like it's done quickly, but it took the years of experience to be able to identify and create it that quickly.
So does not downplay it. It's unpolished, but it doesn't mean that it's easy.
Right.
Because it's definitely not easy. If it was always as simple as picking up an iPhone, shooting something, and putting it on social, everybody would get tons of followers. There's so much more to that. And that's what you're saying there too. It's like the experience that you and your team have had in the years of figuring it out, trialing, erroring, getting successes, but also learning from failures. Right?
Exactly. I think it's, we see it a lot. People talk about reactive content and trends now, and like, oh, what are we going to do on this trend? Or last night, it was the Oscars or whatever. What are we going to, and this photo is trending. How are we going to use it? And sometimes that can be really effective, and you can create content that does really well very quickly, but it takes those years of experience to be able to identify it and go, oh, there's something there that works for our brand. Or on the flip side, be able to look at it and go, that's something we don't need to touch with a 10-foot pole. And it takes a lot of time and effort, and experience to know when that works and when it doesn't.
That's probably a whole nother episode on that, of not touching that one.
But then sometimes, it's a combination of thinking from different people. So which is, somebody spots an idea and says, wouldn't it be so cool if we did something with this? But that's still an idea of something that could be done. Then somebody from the design team is like, what if we, like, for example, during the Olympics, and I'm completely missing, like, I can't remember her name, one of the gymnasts.
Simone?
Yes.
Simone Biles.
There's this shot of her just midair, and one of her hands is kind of up in the air, and then her, and Mercedes took that and kind of placed her right in the center of the rim. And so that became a Mercedes shot. And when you look at it, it's like, but how could you not? It's almost as if this entire thing was put together so Mercedes could get that shot. But
can't unsee it.
And so the point is, like, you look at an image like that. I'm pretty sure that it went through legal very quickly, though. And a lot had to happen, a lot of steps have. And that's the other thing, right? With larger organizations, it takes a lot more to get stuff through the pipeline approved and all that stuff, which is a whole other topic of discussion. But smaller organizations are able to move fast. And I think even larger brands are now seeing that there's value in letting this person just run with it. Like Duolingo is the biggest example of that. They used to do a ton of like product focused stuff, like they're trying to expand in different countries with language. And then they suddenly decided that, you know what, we need a mascot, real life size mascot. And they started filming content with that. And they're organic, like now they're net 11 million across all channels. And their ad spend has significantly gone down. And none of that was filmed on like technology like, we see these days. So interesting stuff. So I have a question for both of you coming from that, which is obviously we're seeing this wave of, okay, well, creators are frustrated with, guys, we're spending so much time and money and energy into producing these. Which one is it? We're following your guidelines. Now our data is skewed because we don't know which way to go. Do you not think that it's time for social media platforms to kind of revise their content guidelines and say, okay, guys, maybe we're taking this too far and over-indexing on the quality. But really, when we say quality, we don't mean National Geographic.
Oh, yeah. It feels like the social platforms change their opinions like all the time. It just goes back and forth. If you read the book No Filter, it's like about the origin story of Instagram. When Instagram started, they were very posh. It was very like, we don't want brands here. We want this to be a place for beautiful photography. They wanted everything kind of pristine and clean. And now, I hate to say it, I feel like Instagram feels like the bargain bin at TJ Maxx. It's just a little bit of everything just thrown in there now. Yeah. So you kind of have to you almost have to be like a ship's captain, like reading the waves of what the trends are. TikTok, even TikTok says, don't make videos, make TikToks. So
interesting. Yeah, never thought of that.
And I think brands have to get over. I'm not sure if it's so much the social platform as the brands saying, oh, this has to be high quality, because they're still following that old school feeling of like, oh, I want this to be put a lot of money into this, and low production values don't equal authenticity either. Right? On the flip side of that, just because you shot it off your phone doesn't mean it's authentic and is good. It takes a lot of skill to do it. But I also say like the best equipment is the equipment you have. The best camera out there is the one that you have with you when you need to take the shot. And for most of us, that's our phone. So having a talented person with that equipment in their hands goes a long way.
Yeah. I think this is just an appetite too, like this appetite that we've seen shift in the consumer towards that level of vulnerability. Like from what you're saying, it's been around for a while. Maybe I'm just catching on now, just starting to realize that now. But I'm even seeing brands who decided like, instead of putting together these high production ads, we're going to shoot our ads like we shoot our organic content, and they're seeing that perform a lot better. So that's been interesting to see as well.
Yeah.
Jon-Stansel, I wanted to ask, so Sabreen, you mentioned, listen, we're creating content for socials and sometimes high profile. It's tough, right? And so I wanted to explore high profile clients that you've worked with before. What are some of the challenges that you see? Because I mean, some brands are still stuck to that sense of it's got to be commercial quality, high production. What are some of the challenges that you've seen in your experience of working with high profiles on trying to get them to say, hey, listen, not just from the production quality perspective, like we've got to be a little bit more authentic here.
Oh, that's a huge challenge, especially in the entertainment industry, because they've been doing it for so long. And can you blame them? You know, you're trying to promote a movie that's going to be premiering in IMAX and have like amazing special effects and all of these things. And to promote it, you want to do a cell phone video of, you know, the cast holding puppies, you know, like what's the, you know, so trying to talk studios into to doing that can be a challenge, but also showing them that, you know, hey, unfortunately, this is just what always happens is you have to point, one person has to do it for them to agree and go, oh, well, this other, you know, look at this and this performed really well. So it's hard to get your foot in the door and let that happen. But once they see it, they start to go, oh, okay. But it becomes a part of the whole. Like sometimes, I mean, you still need high production level stuff out there. We're not advocating like that you should just toss out your high end gear and you know, but it needs to be a part of that ecosystem. You need that authentic content too, and also like looking for content creators that can do it for you. Looking in your audience, like I said, having students, you know, for a university, you know, get the student to create it and pay them, pay students.
But that you have such a polite approach. I have a very crass example of how I built a business case for we need to move away from high production stuff is because there were 15 trends that would come out and all our competitors would leverage them at a different company, not here, at a different company. And I would create a Jira ticket for all 15. And I would spend an enormous amount of time explaining what was required. And then the asset would be delivered after like 4 days. And by this time, the trend has gone. And so I then built out a report for how much earned media value was lost in the past 2 weeks when our competitors have generated real views of whatever amount, right? So I think there's that. It was a little bit of a sassy approach. But like, listen, you could literally plant a GoPro on your cat's forehead and let the cat loose. And this cat comes back after her adventures of the afternoon and you upload that to Instagram, it'll pop off. I guarantee it. Okay. Like then you also look at brands like, for example, Apple. And if you go to their Instagram feed, it's all shot on an iPhone. Now, they do it very interestingly, and I'm pretty sure that it still goes through some kind of, well, I refuse to believe that none of it is post-produced. But I think that we have the right technology, and I'm not saying that an iPhone is the most affordable piece for everybody, but it's something. And I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, for the creator who's not putting content out there, for the brand who's not putting content out there because they feel like they don't have enough to do it, absolutely. But I do agree with you, Jon-Stansel. There's a place, and we shouldn't discard the high production content because it's not just about that, right? It's the authenticity. It's what you said in the beginning. It's the vulnerability and the ability to tell that story so that the audience is like, I see me in there, right? I can share my story through that. And that can be done on a Red camera or an iPhone 10 at this point, right? And maybe people wouldn't appreciate it as much.
Yeah. Interestingly, Reggie, and this is really funny and not like I know we're recording a podcast, but I actually enjoy watching podcasts that are highly produced. Because to me, I'm not always looking like sometimes dinner time, if I'm eating, I want to watch something nice that looks nice, right? Yeah. So there is still value in like, and this is, I know we
talk about channels and content types. I mean, we're not going to sit and watch a Netflix show that was shot on a shaky iPhone. Yeah. There's a place.
I can still listen to a good podcast at dinner time that maybe has a ton of value but doesn't look as good. I would prefer to watch something that is nice on the eyes. So yeah.
Do you have any tips for the marketer that's listening that's trying to develop a more authentic, more genuine approach? What can they do kind of to take some steps towards building a little bit more brand equity in that space?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would say here's one of the first questions I ask when I get a new client is, what about our brand can we make fun of? Are you okay with making fun of? Because then you know where you can kind of humanize yourself. You can be a little self-deprecating. You can be real and honest and not get fired. For example, back to Texas State University. The university does have a river through it, but it's also built on a hill. So like There's stairs. The students say every day is leg day at Texas State because you're climbing stairs all the time. And that was what we could make fun of. Like we would joke about the stairs. And that kind of led to more inroads of like, okay, what can we be real about? You know, what can we be as open and honest? So that might be a good, like, it's kind of tough to like, I will say this, like I do get kind of weird looks from clients who are really concerned when that's the first question I ask. But I ask it for that reason of like, okay, well, that opens up the conversation of where we can be authentic, where we can be real. So yeah, I think that's a good starting point. It's finding out where you can make fun of yourself.
I just thought of an example. I came across this ad by a company called funnel.io. And this guy is basically talking about there's like really sad music playing in the background. And he's like, ever since I started using funnel.io, my life has changed.
Oh, I've seen that
so
ad.
much. I don't have to do this anymore. I can actually watch a TV show. What's going on? Like, am I losing my sense of self? And it occurred to me that, you know, we could adopt like a simple approach, just even for our brand at vistasocial. But it's not to say that we're necessarily poking fun at it, which is, you know, like obviously the example you gave is more direct. But I think it's still some kind of an angle where it's like satire and you're like, okay, I guess your life is better and you have time to eat dinner and you can go on a vacation.
Not taking yourself too seriously, I guess, is what it sounds like a little bit too.
Exactly.
Right? It's like humanizing the brand so that we can connect with it. Yeah, people like to follow people. And I think the more you can humanize that brand into a persona that's relatable, I think you end up with a little bit more of an engaged community. Right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Any final remarks, any thoughts that you want to communicate to that listener who's like, man, this is amazing. I'm going to pick up my camera and I'm going to go shoot something super authentic tomorrow.
Well, I mean, I think that's it. Like, you've just got to start. You've got to do the thing. Like, get out there and do it, you know, and you're going to fail. Like, that's part of it. Like, I've made so many posts, both high production and low production value, where I thought, oh man, this is going to take off, and it falls flat. And you learn from that, right? And that makes you better down the line. So you've got to have those successes and those failures in order to succeed in the long run.
That's how we learn. Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Jon-Stansel, for being here with us. Thank you, Sabreen. We appreciate you for flying all the way from Boston to New York to be with us today. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you guys, as always, for sharing and commenting. Let us know if there's an episode idea that you have, or if you want to join us in the studio here for an upcoming episode. Just head over to vistasocial.com/beyondsocial, and we'll see you next time.